Now I'm going to come back up here to Photo. I'm going to move this down a little bit. And then, again, I'm just going to add some area because I'm going to add some text. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come over here, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the default colors, which is black and white. And there's a little black and white swatch over here on my toolbox on the left-hand side. When I click on it, it brings it so the foreground color is black. Because when you work with your type tool, it takes a look what your foreground color is, and if it happens to be green, it'll be a green color. And then I'm going to switch to my type tool. And then look at my options bar. Notice how it has the options for the fonts and the font sizes. So I'm going to choose a different font here. Oops, excuse me. Let me scroll on up. I'm going to choose Adobe Garamond. Adobe Garamond Pro. I'm also going to come over here to the regular and change it to italics. So again, you can do it after you type in the text, or you can do it before. It just all depends on preference. And I'm going to change the font size. I'm just going to highlight the number here. I'm going to type in 76. You know, as you're working with this, you can also use the drop-down list. But if it's not part of the list, you have to type in the number. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come down and I'm going to click right above this yellow letter area. And I'm going to type in scrapbook. Now you'll notice that this is going off the edge. That's alright, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my move tool. I'm going to move it over here to the right. And notice how I'm moving just the text and I'm not moving any other part of the image. And when you add type, it adds it to its own layer. So look here, it placed the type called scrapbook right above photo because that was my active layer. And the letter T always indicates that it's a type layer. So anytime you add type, it's going to add it on its own layer. So you got to make sure you're on that layer if you want to make any editing changes. And one of the fun things that you can add to layers are layer styles. So you can add drop shadows, you can add outer glows, you can make things look like it's beveled by applying a layer style to it. And you don't have to apply it just to text, you can apply it to any image that's on a layer. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come down to the bottom of the layer panel. I'm going to click on the FX button. It allows me to add a layer style. I can choose whatever choices I want. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose Bevel and Emboss. I'm going to move this little box down so I can actually see the effect on the text, and you can see a big difference right away. When you open up the Layer Styles dialog box, you have multiple options to make changes to. So here, you have different choices. So if I wanted to, I can change the depth. And since I'm really working with a skinnier font, you probably don't want to go too high. So I'll bring it down some. You can change the direction of your or I can bring it up, doesn't matter, but you can change the direction of it and so forth. It's so many things that you can do with this. It's just amazing. Now I'm not going to spend too much detail on explaining each individual command here, but I want you to kind of just understand that you can apply simple styles to your layers, and it does it with a certain click. I'm going to come over to the left and I'm going to click on the drop shadow. I'm going to add a drop shadow. Notice how a shadow comes right below the text. I can change that direction of the shadow so it goes a different way. I can change the distance of the shadow. See how where it's compared to the text? So I can have fun with this, and again, you don't have to do it for type. You can add it for images if you needed to. Next thing I'm going to do, I don't like the black, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to override the black text, and I'm going to change it by using the color overlay. And by default, it always goes to red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the red option here where it says Set Color of Overlay. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click on, I'm going to choose a hue, which is basically if I move my slider in the middle down to the yellow area, we call the color hue. You're choosing the hue. Then over here on the left, this big square, you're going to choose the color that you want. Now you can see what it looks like if you move it out of the way. So you can choose one and you can see a difference. So I want a yellow one that kind of stands out and it also kind of works with the color scheme that I have here. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK again. Now notice that the layer styles are added as effects to the layer. Why is this done? Because if you need to go back and make a change, it's non-destructive, and what that means is I can double click on drop shadow and I can make a modification to it. So if I want to change the distance, make it a little larger, I can do so. I just click OK and it keeps that. Now, when you're working with images like this, it does make your life a lot easier because you can go back and make changes where you want to, and your boss might say, hey, I'd rather have it as red. So you can update any effects by double clicking on it. I'm going to come up here, I'm going to click on the number 2 to reveal it. I'm going to click on the actual layer to see it. As you can see here, it's just a number 2. I'm going to move it over here to the right, and you can see it's already been applied with some opacity so you can see through it. We're going in. And just to help us complete this overall collage that we're creating. The last thing I want to end with is that when you start working with layers, every time you add a layer, it adds to the file size. Sometimes you need to flatten the image, and when you flatten, that means it's going to automatically take all these layers and put it as one, and that would be considered the background. Now you got to be careful in that. What I always do is I always make sure that I save original in the native file format, which is a PSD, and I save it with all the layers, because what happens if your boss comes back and says, I want this number 2 to be over here down at the bottom left? If it's flattened, you cannot do so. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go up to layer in my menu system. I'm going to choose Flatten Image, and I want you to see what happens here. See how it flattens on the layers panel. Look at it as just one background. So it automatically saved it as it flattened it, not saved it, but flattened it as one layer. So I can't go back and make any other changes. So in this case, I'm going to do an edit undo. Always make sure when you're working with layers that you save the original in a native file format and that you keep the layers just in case you need to make a change.